Hey, deserved listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
No sé, ma, todo cambió. Es que él es muy raro. Por ejemplo, ayer le dije que un zapato de él estaba sucio. Y obviamente que es que entró el tanque a lavarlo dentro del tanque. Entonces, es una persona cochina. Estamos durmiendo y yo me levanto. Y él está viéndome como cosa rara. Le brotan los ojos.
Okay, so she said one of his shoes was dirty, hopefully not with the dog crap, and he put it in the washing machine. And that's not what I would do, but I've heard of people doing that, putting their shoes in the washing machine. I can't imagine what it's like to put something that substantial and dense into a ka-clunk, ka-clunk. But I know people who have done that, so it's not incredibly strange, and certainly isn't a reason to break up with someone, I would imagine. Unless you had a huge fight about it. I mean, it sounds like we could imagine she was just like, your shoe's dirty, and he's like, oh, okay, well, what do I need to do? And then he just threw it in the washing machine. Anyway, so, but the more important thing is that she's saying he's still staring at me, even though I have told him not to. I don't know if this has happened after the fact that she said or what, but I'm starting to wonder if either she has some trauma around this or if it. So the rumor is that she was a a pornography camera webcam person who would have interactions over webcam for money, and there's a lot of people that do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing morally wrong with it. There shouldn't be anything legally wrong with it. There's nothing ethically wrong with it. It's all consensual. Everything's fine. There are examples of people being forced into that work, which of course is immoral and unethical and illegal in a variety of horrific ways, but plenty of people do it voluntarily, and it's not a problem for them. Some people dip into that lifestyle and find that it is not to their liking, and they can have long-term effects from that. I've actually worked with former sex workers who have done various different kinds of work who regret having done it. So it's not all fun and games for everybody, but plenty of people, it's fine. So, and I don't want to spread rumors. I have no idea if Ximena did that. It'd be a pretty significant rumor to spread. So I just want to say we all understand the internet is filled of lies, and that could be one of the lies. But if it is true and Mike was the customer, we could imagine either that for Ximena, she might have been slightly traumatized, if not significantly traumatized, by various customers or some of the customers that she worked with. Who knows? And that Mike looking at her kind of reminds her of that. We could also imagine that, particularly for Mike, that imagine starting, because that if it was how they started their relationship, which I don't know if it's true, that for you to have a customer relationship with someone and you are interacting with them, you can imagine that for a lot of these workers, they're not really connecting emotionally all the time with the customers. It's just part of work. They might be kind of into it a little bit, but not the way you would be as if you were in a real romantic relationship with someone. And that, well, anyway, what am I saying? This is what I'm saying. So if this was true, which I have no idea if it was, that her relationship with Mike for a good period of time, or some period of time, was that of a customer who would be requesting of her to do certain things, and he would be sexually utilizing it. Try not to get flagged by it. I don't have a problem saying the words. I just don't know if YouTube has a problem with me saying them. I'm sure it does. Anyway, so he's sexually utilizing it, and she is watch, because both people are on video cam sometimes, not all the time, but she is seeing him look at her that way. And although it's consensual and she's getting paid and maybe she's totally fine with it, maybe even she kind of likes it a little bit, I don't know. But then she transitions to romantic engagement, fiancé, the stepfather of my kids, a companion, that kind of thing. And then there are times when she notices that he's looking at her. And let's say in that scenario, he's not looking at her in a sexual utilizing manner. but it reminds her of that time, and it grosses her out. We could see that happening. We could also see it turning someone on. I don't want to be sex negative. There's plenty of opportunities for variation here, but I wonder if it reminds her. There's another possibility that he is sexually utilizing her, because that was the relationship that he had originally with her, and of course, it's normal to sexually utilize visually your partner in, romantic relationships and sexual relationships. But it could remind her of that relationship, that it doesn't feel good for her. So I wonder if that makes her more sensitive and makes him more likely to do it. It's an interesting question to have, given what their rumored history is. Again, I have no idea if it's true. The worst thing I can imagine someone saying is, well, Dr. Kirk Honda said that she was a webcam sex worker. I did not say that. I said that there were rumors about it. So say Dr. Kirk Honda said that there was a very there's an allegation and a rumor going around that this, and I don't know, maybe even Ximena has confirmed this and I'm just not aware of it, but or refuted it, I guess, for that matter. But anyway, but it is an interesting question. If it did come from that, I wonder if that's playing into the dynamic of staring.
Él se preocupa por usted, por los niños, está pendiente de todo lo suyo. Y puedan realizar un hogar bien bonito con los niños y todo. A mi pensar está haciendo muy malas cosas, porque para mí la única persona que verdaderamente le ha demostrado amor incondicional ha sido Mike.
She's saying the only person in Ximena's life who has ever been unconditional with love and with care and with support and with actually loving your kids and all that kind of stuff is Mike. Who knows if that's accurate, but that's, interesting perspective, interesting detail. Also, she's saying you probably shouldn't pass things up with him because of these reasons. But if I were her, hearing what Ximena is saying, I would be like, oh, you're not in love with him anymore. Like, you're disgusted by him. You're repulsed by him. So maybe it's time to pack it up.
Porque Mike no le importa a sus hijos. Dice, tu familia es mi familia. Pero pues, ella no piensa como una mujer ya.
And it's possible that in various parts of the world, including the United States, one's attention to one's emphasis on certain things, shifts toward, think about Rose and Ed, that for her, and given the poverty that we understand that she was living in, that there are bigger fish to fry than being not repulsed by someone. Meaning that, well, if you can make it work, then you can give your kids education, you can give your kids healthcare, you can give your kids a life, you can give your kids a future, you can give your kids a possible career and setting up their own lives for good things. Like, everything kind of depends on this working. And if this doesn't work, then it's poverty and single momhood and distress and problem, your kids falling in with the wrong crowd. Like, there's a lot of things that can hinge from that. And it's one of the things that, as a privileged American, I sometimes have to remind myself, which of course shouldn't be that hard for me to remember, but a lot of people in the world, and I don't know if this is true for Ximena, but we did know it was true for Rose and with Ed, that the depths of the poverty and what it's not, because sometimes for privileged Americans, poverty is like, oh, I can't afford the new iPhone or something. And it means that, but it also means like lack of health care. You get sick and you literally can't go to the doctor, or you have lack of the ability to not make your kid work, so that, like, because the family needs money, the kids gotta work, and that interferes with their school, and then they just, never really get an education. Or lack of security, where you're a victim of crimes and robberies and muggings or whatever, or blackmail or something, or being forced into certain kind of work because you're desperate or people are bullying you. Like, these are real things that happen to real people. I have no idea if that happens to Ximena, but anyway, that's where I think she's coming from. Well, I don't know where she's coming from, but we could imagine that being a part of the equation in terms of saying, Ximena, like, are you sure that you really want to not make it work with this person?
Mujer ya con sus 5 sentidos.
Tiene que tenerle paciencia,
Sí, paciencia.
así como él se la tiene a usted.
¿Yo qué hago? Nada.
Nada.
Now, it needs to be said that it's unfair that some people are forced into a situation where they have to make that decision to marry someone that they're repulsed by in order to get a fair shake in the world. That's completely unfair. I don't know exactly what to do about that. Income disparity comes to mind. Exploitation of the workers also comes to mind. Colonialism and the decimation of an economy comes to mind. So I think that, it's obvious, but that should be said.
No, nada.
Yo soy la más sana de todas. Y me gustaría poder construir la relación otra vez como era antes. Pero pues, la verdad es que no estoy feliz con Maya ahora mismo. Entonces, no sé qué vaya a pasar.
Okay, I got a little worried there. I think it's pretty clear. She's not only not interested in, she's repulsed by him. So it's one thing to be like, well, I mean, I'm not in love with him. I'm not particularly attracted to him, but I could make it work. It's something to be like, he disgusts me. Everything about him disgusts me. Him looking at me, the way he does his things, like it's disgusting to me. Like, that's going to be hard to make it work. And it could, even if you did make it work, it could be abusive to the Mikes of the world. So, and she said, I want to make this work. And I was like, oh no, like, don't force it for everyone's sake. And then she says, but I don't know if it's going to work. So maybe we're looking at, because I think this is the last episode before the tell-all. I don't know, but I think we're going to see the resolution. By the way, another thing I want to point out is that I never watch the previews. When we go to commercial break, they'll be coming up. I never watch that because it spoils it. And I don't understand why 90 Day. It's like, do the producers not think we're going to watch the people generally watch the whole show? You don't have to put a preview. Imagine in the middle of a movie, like a Batman movie, this thing coming up. It's like, yeah, I'm watching the thing. Like, don't spoil it in the middle of the show. So I don't watch those, which I find to be incredibly annoying. Like, that was the nice thing about Love is Blind on Netflix, is they never did any of that. They never did that in the middle. They never did that at the end. At the end of the episode, it was like, coming up next week. It's just like, they just trust in your product that people are going to watch it. You don't have to tease things. People tune in. Anyway, so I never watch those things because I want y'all to see me reacting genuinely. And so, yeah. And by the way, refrain from emailing me spoilers or tell me spoiler, or just don't, because I don't want to see any spoilers because it ruins the whole thing, not only for my reaction but also just for me. Like, I want things to unfold, naturally for me.
These past few days have been a little bit of a roller coaster with Ximena. She said she was going to change her ways about how she treats me, and it seems like that was very short-lived. I only have a few days left on this trip, and Ximena doesn't really seem to want to spend time together.
Yeah, it looks like they're headed for a breakup, which I think is probably best given her attitude and her feelings towards him. We're also hearing from him that it was short-lived and that she was sweet to him and kissing him last episode, which seemed like, oh, are we heading back towards warmth again and motivation and attraction to him? But his account is that it went back to disgust and get away from me and that kind of stuff.
What could I do?
¿Tienes algún buen consejo para mí? Como si fueras yo, ¿qué podría hacer?
Pues, May, yo lo único que te digo ten paciencia, porque ella tampoco nunca ha tenido una relación seria, entonces pues ella tampoco sabe qué es tener una relación seria.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if we've learned that detail. I mean, there were some things hovering around that, but the mom is saying she's never been in a serious relationship before, which is interesting. Now, maybe Ximena would say, no, I've been in I just didn't, my mom just doesn't really understand, but that's interesting. I don't know what that says. What does that say? Well, I think one thing it could indicate is that Ximena's issues regarding attachment and trust are significant, not only just with Mike, but maybe with everyone. In that, I mean, I don't. So there are individuals who are aromantic and asexual or asexual who aren't interested in having sex, aren't interested in being in a relationship. They're separate things. There's a Venn diagram there, but there's some people who just aren't interested in romantic relationships. They're not avoiding that. Now, if someone has a history of not having any serious relationships or avoidance of it, it could be an indication of trauma or attachment insecurity or some kind of defense. It also could just be an indication that they're just not oriented that way and they're just not interested in that. So we don't know which one it is, but we could imagine a situation where Ximena might have some relational traumas that will cause her to, not with Mike per se, but with a lot of other relationships, of having a hard time navigating the relationship. If her relationship with Mike is any indication of her past relationships, it's possible that she doesn't trust people and just never lets people in, because she's not a particularly vulnerable person. She's not a particularly open person. But we don't know that. We've only seen that with Mike. I don't know. It's an interesting detail that I'm guessing we'll never get any more details to kind of hone in on a hypothesis. But it does make me worry about her, honestly. If she has enough relational, because if she's never been in a serious relationship due to defenses, and we saw some of those defenses kind of kick in with Mike, then those defenses will be present in the future, which will make it harder, continue to make it hard for her to be in a relationship. But I don't know. It's a lot of speculation.
Y pues sé que ella no se le presta mucho a usted para hablar, pero hable con ella lo más que ustedes puedan hablar, aproveche el tiempo que está acá para poder saber cómo sigan adelante. Pues esperemos de que ella recapacite y cambie. Mire que usted es una buena oportunidad para ella y para los niños.
Yeah, I hear that language. Let's hope that she sees that you're a good opportunity for her and for her kids, meaning economic, security, which is, it saddens me to think that Ximena would be in a position where she would have to consider being with someone she's repulsed by. Not that Mike is inherently repulsive by any means, but she clearly is having a reaction against him, that she would be forced into that situation because of economic unfairness. All right, well, if you didn't know already, we have a website, which makes sense, and we also have an audio podcast. If some of you only watch on YouTube, but there's an audio podcast version where you can go to a podcast app on your phone. It's just audio only. The videos obviously aren't on that, but the audio episodes that are on YouTube are on that. And it's an easier way to listen, I think, and all the episodes are all, laid out there. And so if you want to do that, you can do that. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.